afternoon, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google+. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Saturday, April 23rd, 2015, around 4:22 in the afternoon, Billerica, Massachusetts. The clouds broke up and it's a sunny day out, about 60 today. Great spring day. Tomorrow is going to be a little cooler in 50s, but still sunshine. Next week could turn a little unsettled, especially at midweek where could be 40s and a lot of rain. But no 70s, not until May. The rest of the month will be stuck in the 50s and 60s. But that's good by me. We don't need 90-degree weather in April because that could jinx us with being a cold May and maybe snow. But no snow, please. Some news to report. Mike Greenberg and Mike Goldridge of Mike and Mike in the Morning on ESPN Radio and ESPN2 are going into the NAB Broadcasters Hall of Fame, so congratulations to them. And it looks more unlikely that the NHL will allow its players to play in the 2018 Winter Olympic Games because of so many issues and liability. So they won't participate. They're probably not going to be playing in the 2018 Winter Games. The NHL season will not be shut down for 2.5 weeks. But this is good news for Russia because they're probably going to have a lot of players on their team who play professionally for the KHL, and they'll probably win the gold medal. And that's about it on the news. My second video blog subject of the day is about the NHL on NBC. The National Hockey League has broadcast rights to carry the games on the National Broadcasting Company since 2006, but they broadcast the NHL 2 times before their current contract. And the NHL on NBC still gives a lot of exposure to the NHL on national broadcast television than ever before. Back in the mid-60s on NBC Sports in Action, it was an anthology series like to compete with ABC's Wide World of Sports and the CBS Sports Spectacular. They showed some NHL playoff games in 1966 in color. It was Chicago Blackhawks versus Detroit Red Wings and Montreal Canadiens against the Detroit Red Wings, and it was to get the NHL exposed on television because they didn't have a national television contract with any over-the-air broadcast network in the United States during that time, and also to fill programming for Sports in Action. And they had Jim Simpson and Bill Cullen, the game show hosts, do the interviews for the in-between periods. And in 1972, the NHL signed a deal with NBC to carry a game of the week on Sunday afternoons. Plus, they showed some primetime games. Usually, they showed the games on the regular seasons by U.S.-based NHL teams. But once in a while, they would have the Canadiens or the Maple Leafs playing, and they would carry select playoff games on the weekends and maybe a couple of Stanley Cup Finals games in prime time, but not the entire series. And also during intermission, they had Peter Puck, which was a cartoon character via Hanna-Barbera, and they also would have Showdown, which they had like 16 NHL players and a goaltender face off against one another, like a shootout and stuff. They would show it in between periods. And the play-by-play announcers for the NHL on NBC during the 70s were Tim Ryan and Ted Lindsay and hockey writer Brian McFarlane but the ratings for the NHL on NBC were so horrible. Many stations in the South especially preempted NHL coverage to show their own programming, and NBC had a 4-year deal, but they dropped it at the conclusion of the 1975 Stanley Cup Finals because they were losing big time money on it. And this television contract meant the next 20 years there was no NHL on national broadcast television in the United States. That was not very good. In the early 1990s, from 1990 to 1994, the NBC carried the All-Star Game, and they had Marv Albert call it along with Bill Clement, and also they had John Davison call it as well. And there were rumors in 1992 and 1993 that they were going to have an 8-game package of the NHL games on NBC, but that was a share buy. And also, the NHL wanted all NBC affiliates to carry all the games, but especially down south, they were not going to carry it. And when they showed the All-Star Game on NBC during 1990 through 1994, a lot of key markets in the South did not show the game on their local NBC affiliate. It was shown on an independent one in cities like Phoenix and Atlanta and Dallas and Tampa and Miami, which eventually got NHL teams. And the NHL signed a deal with Fox, so that shut out NBC. Plus, it would have been kind of a little bit impossible to show games of the NHL on NBC during that time period on a regular basis because they had a contract with the NBA, and the NBA got double the ratings. And for the next 10 years, they did not have any NHL games on NBC. In May of 2004, NBC signed on with the NHL for 2 years. It was with no rights fee. It was a revenue sharing thing, and NBC was desperate to get major professional sports on because they lost every professional sports they had. And the deal was supposed to start in 2004, 2005, 2-year deal with an option for 2 more, but the NHL had a lockout and they couldn't do it. But then the next year they started it, and the deal called for 6 regular season games. All of them were going to be regional, with all U.S.-based teams doing the 6 games, and the playoffs would be weekend, both Saturday and Sunday through the first 2 rounds, also conference finals and games 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7 on NBC, and NBC got first priority for any playoff games, and they would usually show American-based NHL teams during the playoffs unless if they were playing a Canadian team in the semifinals or the finals, so that was unavoidable. And the number 1 play-by-play team for the NHL on NBC was Mike Emrick and John Davison for the first year. Davison went to the front office of the St. Louis Blues, and he was replaced by Eddie Olczyk, and it's been Mike Emrick and Eddie Olczyk ever since. And also other regional teams was Chris Cutbear and Dave Stregler, and they had in between periods hosted by Bill Clement and Ray Farrell and Brett Hall in the second year, and they actually had a pregame show that was shown on NBCSports.com. And the ratings for NHL on NBC were pretty good during those 2 years, and NBC renewed it for 2 more without a rights fee. In the 2007-2008 season, they dropped all the regional coverage, and they would have a standalone game at 12:30 Sundays. They would have about 9 of them, and they would have like 3 potential games on, which teams, they could only pick one. They would do it like 14 days in advance, and those other two ones would go back to the regional sports network or the local broadcasters. Plus, in addition, in 2008 they started the NHL Winter Classic, and also continued to broadcast both Saturday and Sundays for playoff games for the Stanley Cup and the Stanley Cup Finals. They modified it with being now 1, 4, 6. 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for the Stanley Cup Finals. And NHL on NBC continue to grow with great ratings, and they continue to renew it year after year after year. In 2011, they would have the first Hockey Day in the United States, which they showed like 6 hours of like a doubleheader of hockey regional games. The first half and the second half of the doubleheader, a standalone game. And in 2011, the NHL and NBC signed a deal, 10-year contract, over $1 billion total, and NBC paid $250 million, and it was the most lucrative contract that the NHL ever got by a U.S.-based television network. And including in these deals, NBC and NBCSN, which was then Versus, but it was converted over to NBCSN, would get games during the weekdays. NBC would get a Showdown Friday game after Thanksgiving, the NHL Winter Classic, plus Stadium Series games, more Game of the Weeks, enhanced playoff coverage, including primetime playoff games for the first 2 rounds of the Stanley Cup Stanley Cup playoffs. Still games 1, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the Stanley Cup Finals, heritage games for the NBCSN, and all Stanley Cup playoff games shown nationwide in the United States on NBC, NBCSN, CNBC, USA Network, and the NHL Network. 2012 was the first time that all NHL playoff games were seen in the United States. All of them. Before, you might have seen maybe a few of them not shown nationally in the United States in the first 2 rounds. And also exclusive Wednesday night rivalry games and exclusive playoff coverage from the quarterfinals to finals of Stanley Cup action. And plus, they still had more exposure than ever before, and the ratings on NBC and NBCSN has been awesome for the NHL, and the NHL is reaping the benefits for getting a lucrative television contract from a U.S.-based over-the-air network television, which was awesome considering 30 years ago the former president of the NHL, John Ziegler, gave that up in the mid-'80s because no network was going to give it to him, and that cost the NHL millions and millions of dollars. But the NHL is doing pretty good with this deal, and the coverage on NBC and NBCSN are so superb. I think the NHL and NBC are a perfect match, and I would expect them to continue their relationship past 2021 because no other network's going to give them the coverage like NBC and NBCSN is going to give them, because they'll probably be stuck on the back burner on ESPN and ABC because of the NBA coverage, and CBS SN is still, growing. They have no room for CBS because of all the other commitments, and Fox and FS1 still disappointing, and Fox just doesn't have any room for them, so it's going to be NHL on NBC for a long, long time. And that's about it on that. I'll be back with the third and final video blog of the night, which will be about WWE Hall of Famer Precious Paul Ellering. Keep calm, everybody. I'm a Julie Button guy. Molly Roseblood of WCCO has nice legs. Elizabeth Hat's so stunning. She's the best. Amy Swensey's awesome. Bobby Gibbs of ABC 11 has that sweet southern accent. Linda Church of WPIX New York's awesome. Shirley Spear of Fox 25 has great legs. And in the words of Bruce Cronin, former co-worker at Hot Hanks Data Technology, want to put a wager on that, Richie? And the late great Peter Courtney, former maintenance man at Hot Hanks Data Technology. Are you writing the book Black Flies? Bye now.